G'day again, this is the third video in my Book of Ayden series. Today I want to go over three more concepts, mainly regarding communication, starting with the pyramid of communication, keywords and code words, and then moving on to approaching micromanagement and the communication around that. So I want to start with the pyramid of communication and what it is. So the pyramid of communication to me, it basically prioritizes who your main speakers are in a team. So, in my mind, your three main speakers are your IGL, your op, and a +1 rifle. Now, this normally ends up being a guy who's naturally more vocal on your team. And how the pyramid of communication helps is, let's say you want to set up site leaders on the CT side. Well, it's going to be a lot easier for your team to set that up with your IGL and rifle being on one side of the map. Let's say your IGL's on B site and this +1 rifle is on A site, and now they're able to communicate both sites. And if you were to go over to the T side, then normally one of these players would be a part of the pack communicating, and maybe you have another one who's on the lurk or communicating the other side of the map. They basically play off of each other, and the op, in my opinion, needs to be a very communicative piece within a team, setting up the players around their op and going for their plays and their moves. And they can also help with calling of the round. They kind of command the troops in the middle of the round. If you think kind of an IGL is giving the start of round idea, and they're making like the mid/end round idea, the +1 rifle is kind of filling the information voids within that, and then your op is commanding the players. That's how I kind of view the pyramid of communication. Now, this doesn't mean that everybody doesn't contribute. Everybody contributes. But you can now have a player who's maybe naturally not as talkative, and they just provide the information they need to provide. They're not relied on to command the actual setup and the moving of the pieces. And another thing to keep in mind, you can make it the job of anybody on the pyramid, but just making sure the team as a whole is calling the enemy by. So if you're unsure if the other team is on a pistol buy or if they have an op, then you're confirming that during the round. So the first person who gets a kill, if they kill somebody with a deagle, they're saying enemy pistol buy. Or if they jump mid on Dust 2 and they see the op and suicide, they're calling, they have an op alive. So that's kind of the pyramid of communication which I want to go over. Again, not all teams are going to follow this. In reality, everybody does contribute, but it's a nice little system you can put in place to understand who your site leaders are, how you're going to control your pack on T side, and the general calling hierarchy within a team. I'm going to move on to keywords and code words now. When I move on to approaching micromanagement, I'll jump in the server, but I'll just section that off and we'll focus on the left side now. So for keywords and code words, there's kind of a few things to keep in mind. Now, what's a keyword and what's a code word and how are they both used? Well, keywords are basically a bunch of words your team creates to simplify an action, or to provide a whole bunch of information in a single word. So if you're on a round winning flank, instead of saying, I'm on a flank, everybody sit still and wait, you can just say one word. Our word is dagger. And what dagger means is you're on a play that's potentially round winning, So everybody else stay alive, play their spots, and wait to see what happens. The word you choose for whatever you use or whatever you want to purvey, that's fine. But we have another one. We have it as snowball, but I've heard this called flood. And what that means is everybody gun up, buddy up, run onto a site together. One more for the example, we have one called light. I've been enjoying using this one recently. What this means is everybody throws their flashbangs onto one person, and when you run and execute, that one person just keeps pivoting flashbangs. And that's kind of a really nice thing I've been using recently, but there's some examples of keywords. And with keywords, you want to remove and refine keywords within a team. So for example, snowball is snowball is kind of two words. So you could just actually have it as flood. And flood comes out a lot faster than snowball. So you can come in and refine it like that, but also you might have a bunch of keywords and then you find yourself only using maybe 4 of them and you've got 8 written down. Well, what you want to do is you want to find a way to get rid of the ones you're not using or kind of combine them into one, or just focus on a small group that actually works. So you're always refining your keywords, you're always simplifying it, and you're making it easy for your team. They're a way to add free structure to any team, keywords. Now, they're keywords, so what about code words? Well, code words are quite neat. How I view code words are they're basically codes, or how I like to do them is codes for type of like rounds and smokes you're going to see. So if you think the cross smokes on nuke for red, if you're on the CT side and you see the T's do those red smokes, you would give them a code word. So in the past, I would call them Coca-Cola or Coke smokes. And then if a team was to do the Annex cross smoke, so they smoked off Annex garage and they used that to cross the secret, I'd call those Pepsi smokes. So then players would go Coke smokes outside, Pepsi smokes outside, and it's a quick way to purvey what the enemy's doing. And if you're on the T side as well, and for whatever reason you want to call around with these smokes, you know, you could say, and let's say you do a number system. I don't normally use a number system, I like a word system, but let's say you're playing nuke and you go, let's have 1 lobby, 4 outside with Pepsi smokes. That's not a bad way to call around at all. You're calling numbers and you're calling the code word for kind of the smokes you want to see. So that's how I would define code words. Now, I just use Pepsi and Coke as food options, but you know, you could use animal. You know, people are doing tiger smokes, you know. People are doing sloth smokes. It doesn't matter too much, just as long as you give them code words for things you see. So on Mirage, let's say a team does a con and window smoke. You might name that tiger smoke. But then if a team only does a top mid smoke, you might name that something else. So that's how I'll define code words. So it basically simplifies things you see within a round. That's just about all I have for this type of communication. There are a few other things you want to keep in mind. So this kind of fits in keywords and code words, but after you throw a flashbang, you always want to say like boom or pop when that's about to go off, and that's always really good. Just as an example, I'll go through a little bit more as I think about them in the continuation of this video, but I'm going to move on to, I believe, Ancient now, where I want to talk about approaching micromanagement. So just things like open and closed instructions, knowing your player's behavior, and figuring out who prefers what when it comes to giving micromanagement within a game of Counter-Strike. So I'll see you in the server. So we're on the server now, and I want to talk about approaching micromanagement and the comms behind that, and primarily open and close-ended instructions, and how your players respond to each of those. And how as an IGL you can basically figure that out and make your micromanagement, in my opinion, better. So just talking about open-ended and close-ended instruction, what is both? Well, let's say you have a start for your cave player on Ancient, and the close-ended instruction is molly shorts, do a HE, I've just found out, but do a HE, flash and take cave. Well, that's a very close-ended instruction because it's very specific on what the player does. But now let's say you have a default written in and you're saying, Bob, go take cave. Now when Bob goes and takes cave, he might have any number of ways he takes cave through maybe watching a demo, or he's just a very skilled player. So with that in mind, that's the difference between an open-ended and close-ended instruction. Now, how this applies to micromanagement is, let's say you're sitting in cave here and you want your player who's maybe rotating into B to help you out. Well, there's a big difference, in my opinion, between saying, Kyle, come towards cave and jiggle and bait my contact, please, as compared to, Kyle, help me cave. There's a big difference on how the individual interprets that as well, and who you're talking to, because some people really like the close-ended instruction of doing the exact task, and honestly, some people might even need it. Whilst on the other hand, you might have people who are very cognizant of their game and know how they want to approach things. And maybe this one-off example seems small, but when you're playing multiple scrims a day and you're doing it over and over and over again, I'm sure Kyle doesn't appreciate being told exactly what to do in every single round when you're talking to him. And a lot of people react differently to this, and how you put instructions like this within playbooks matters as well. So what I like to do is we have a general base rules we set out for the team, which everybody agrees on basically how you want to play Counter-Strike, how the calls look, etc. And in that, I ask everybody, do they prefer totally open, slightly closed, or totally closed kind of instructions and micromanagement. And I understand each player, and I get feedback after every game of what they preferred. So I have a teammate on my team right now who likes being told the goals of what to do. If, let's say I'm dead and I'm calling the mid round, it's just let's take cat, or help take cat. That's just the goal. Let's gain cat, we'll end day. Done. However, there are other situations where I might sit down with another person who's alive and say, hey, can you molly this and get a flash ready for X player to pick? And understanding that little key difference can actually go a very long way in how you're communicating micromanagement, and just in your teammates kind of respecting yourself as well, like over a long period of time, and how much and how little you should basically give. And that also comes with knowing your players' behavior. And that's especially true with even op players as well. So it's my belief that an op player should be very commanding of players, but sometimes op players are kind of passive in their way and they don't really call their own plays. Now, I think an op should, but maybe that's initiative for you as an IGL to give this person an open-ended or close-ended instructions with that op. So that's basically all I wanted to touch with micromanagement and approaching it in general with the comms. I might, for chapter 4, go over kind of demo watching and how to approach that as your team. We'll kind of see how it goes, but for now, I hope this has been helpful. Thank you for watching. I've had quite a bit of fun doing these videos, so hopefully see you on the next one.